Recording.
All right, ladies, gentlemen, and Richard, who's a category of his own, you are here tonight, today, this morning, to learn about how to design incentives that actually work using behavioral economics. Originally, he was going to do a talk on behaviors that incentives that really don't work because it would have been funnier, but we convinced him to go with incentives that do work. So, Richard is one of my favorite people to introduce. He is our managing director, but also what you don't know about Richard is he's a straight up French basketball star. And so if you get a chance to ask him about this, he's 5'1". No, he's not that short. He's not that short. He's a little taller. What are you, Richard? 6'1"?
6'1".
Yeah, that's a French basketball star. That's what I'm talking about. You can ask him in the Q&A, but he heads our healthcare practice and formerly led its financial decision-making work. He's overseen dozens of behavioral economics projects and experiments with commercial clients. A few of these include little companies like One Medical, Tyto Care, Nugent, Vouchers for Veggies, which gets the best title award in the string, Steady, Beneficial State Bank, Simple, and Credit Karma. Prior to joining Irrational Labs, he was a senior behavioral scientist at the Common Sense Lab, a Duke University initiative which leverages behavioral economics to improve the financial well-being of low and moderate income Americans, where he designed and launched numerous behaviorally informed products, features, initiatives, and experiments. Formally, he has applied behavioral economics at Ideas 42. Richard, is that technically a lowercase I these days?
Yes.
I did not know that. What's the story behind that?
That was the name. That's just the name they chose.
Okay, well, I mean, I thought it would be capital I, but if you get back to me on that for next time.
Yeah.
And he developed random controlled trials for innovations for poverty action in Morocco. He's also served as a team lead, senior investment officer, and a senior advisor at USAID's Office of Development Credit, and worked at Cornerstone Research and economic and financial consulting firm specializing in complex commercial litigation. By the way, he's also under 40. So Richard may have lived 3 lives. I wanted to leave that before I go to the last paragraph. He holds a master's degree from a little place in New York City called Columbia University's School of International and Public Affairs, where he studied advanced policy and economic analysis, and he has a bachelor's degree from the University of Virginia, whose basketball team is hot this year, where he studied economics, Spanish, and French, graduating Phi Beta Kappa. He's bilingual and then some. Would you consider yourself trilingual, Richard?
Yes.
Show off. And he even taught stats at Columbia. So this guy, he knows numbers, he knows experiments, and he knows hoops. So without any more hyping of Richard, take that screen share away.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. Let's see what we can do here. How are we looking? Does this look like the right thing? Oh, wrong one. Wrong thing. Here we go. All right. I think we're good now, right? Thank you, Ryan, for that wonderful intro. Every time Ryan introduces me, it's a joy and a delight. And the fact that he put French basketball star under my picture has made my day. So anything that happens from here on out is just gravy.
But that is a true story, though. Just tell them really quickly. You grew up in Texas, and tell the story.
Yeah, I studied in France. Yeah, and played on the university team there, and it was a lot of fun. It wasn't like playing in college in the US. It was like playing in high school in the US, but it was a fun time. All right. So today I'm excited to talk to you all about incentives. And so I think I'm going to keep it pretty informal. And so I'd love to hear your participation in the chat as we go along. High level, I'm going to talk about incentives. Some of the psychologies behind incentives and incentive design, I think an overview, and then I'm going to go deep into 2 case studies that we ran to test incentives and incentive alternatives, and talk about what happened and importantly, why we think it happened, and what the implications of that are for designing interventions, products, et cetera, that use incentives. Before we go into incentives, I'll say that incentives are, I think, one of the most interesting areas of behavioral economics, and also one of the more complex. Oftentimes, when you ask, you think about designing a specific product or an intervention, often you'll hear the answer to a behavioral scientist, what should I do here? And it depends. I think incentives is one of those areas where it depends is like bold, capitalized. So it's a really tricky area. Okay, so high level, going to talk about incentives. I'm going to go through these case studies and then discussion Q&A. Would love to hear your thoughts. Also, feel free if you have questions. I'll try to monitor the chat. I'm not always the best at monitoring the chat. So if you have a burning question, feel free to pop off mute and just say it. And then I will pause at a couple of different places if you have questions about what I'm talking about or the implications. And then at the end, we will have time for discussion and Q&A. So we'll have plenty of time at the end as well. Great. So first is incentives. Do they work? And I was initially going to posit this question to the group, but I sort of gave it away at the beginning. My answer is, again, it really, really depends. And so I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios in which incentives might impact our behavior, starting at a theoretical level. Let's assume that you want to start running. And one of the reasons you want to start running is because you want to get healthier. And so you say, you know what, yeah, I'd love to feel better mental health, maybe better physical health, better stamina, et cetera. I'm going to start running. And you start running and you say, okay, great. I feel really good about this. It's hard. Some days I miss it. Creating a habit is difficult, especially something that I'm not really used to doing. And then all of a sudden someone comes to you and says, you know what? I know you've been running, and if you run, let's say your partner says, I really appreciate that you've been running. I think you've been in such a great mood. You've done really well with the kids. I'd love to, give you extra bonus. I think I'm creating a fund and we're going to pay you every time you go running. And so, you just have $10 cash, and every time you go running, you pick up that $10. So the question is, what happens to your motivation to go running when you start to add that additional financial incentive? And at a theoretical level, what you've done is sort of dilute your desire to run, which initially was entirely for health reasons, with a financial incentive. So you've weakened the relationship between the means and the original goal, even if your incentive remains. And so let's say that you stop caring about your health. You say, oh, well, I don't even notice anymore. I've been running for about 2 months and I don't even notice feeling better. I can't see any physical changes, but I'm still getting that $10. I feel all right about that, right? So the question is, should we introduce that $10? Should we not introduce that $10? Should we introduce it as $10, $20, $50, $100? Should we pay it every time you go running? Should we pay it at the end of the month? Should we introduce it as a regret lottery where, if you don't go running, you're not enrolled in a lottery to win a big amount of money? And so these are some of the questions we start to think about. Okay. One possibility with incentives is multifinality. And what that means is that you might go running and have 2 goals. So your first goal might be health, and it might be seeing friends. So let's say you have a running partner and you run with that partner and talk to them every morning. And this is a really nice way to socialize before you go into the office or you start working. That is really nice because all of a sudden you've got 2 goals. So this strengthens your desire to run, as long as it doesn't ruin, again, the first goal means relationship. And that's the question, right? In what cases would that happen? Something to think about. On the other hand, you can have lots of means, and that can be super motivating. So let's say that your main focus is getting healthy. And you could do that through a variety of different ways. One is biking, one is running, and one is soccer or basketball, right? This is great because all of a sudden you have multiple different approaches to get to that health, to that ultimate outcome. So that's also great. So if you stack incentives, you will undermine the original means goals relationship. And this is especially important when the extra incentive is not relevant necessarily. So when you're going running every day, and then there's a fund that started for $10 each time, it's not especially relevant to your running, right? It's not related. Whereas if you're running and you happen to be running with someone, it's kind of relevant. That's nice. And you also want to be kind of aware, is that incentive incompatible with the original reason that you were going to do something? Does it seem incongruent? That's the other area we might start to say, oh, maybe this is not such a great idea. Okay. Incentives also cue us into why we're doing a specific behavior. And so especially behaviors or activities that we've never done before. When does this happen? For adults, this is pretty rare, right? Think about the number of activities you've never done before and you have no mental model about whether they're enjoyable or not. That's pretty limited. That's a pretty limited space. But especially for people who maybe are younger, children, or uncertain newbies, people who are maybe starting something that they've never tried before, let's say pottery or something like that. They might be unsure if this is something that they would like to get paid to do, be paid to do, etc. Myself, for example, I have a really hard time with arts and crafts. And I know that, like, if you ask me to go to a pottery class, I'd say, how much are you going to pay me to go to that pottery class? I know a lot of people who'd pay, a lot of money to be taught pottery, right? And so again, it just sort of depends on the activity and the person who's and their experience with that activity, whether this is something that you're sort of attributing a financial value to in terms of being paid, needing to pay, etc. A corollary to this is we do jobs for money, right? So let's say you showed up to your job and said, you know what? You get a raise. We're going to give you more money. That's not a bad thing, right? You're going to say that I'm great. I'm happy. I'm really excited about that. Thank you. It's not going to weaken your desire to do that job. Okay. Couple of thoughts about it. One really nice example that you may have read or heard of. Does anyone know what this example is referencing?
I'm not allowed to answer. I taught high school English, but
You
that's
know this one? Ryan knows this one. All right, no Ryan. Anybody know what this is? Tom Sawyer, exactly. Yeah, you want to come off mute and tell the story about this one?
Yeah.
Go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So it's a story about a young guy who got a task to paint a wall, I believe, because he did something bad. So that was actually a punishment, but he managed to turn it around and convince his friends that it's a very exciting activity. And basically all his friends painted the wall and even paid him money, I think, for the pleasure. So that's
Yep.
the story in short, I think.
Yep, that's just about right. That's right. And this anecdote was sort of Mark Twain's desire to say, hey, we do a lot of different activities. Some of them we get paid for, and some of them we pay to do. And again, it's unclear in a vacuum which is which. And again, especially for, as I mentioned, these uncertain newbies, that can really make a difference. You don't know. So in case of Tom Sawyer here, he had a job to do, which was a punishment. He was able to make it seem so fun and bring in his friends at such a level that all of a sudden he had them all doing it for him. And he was like, this is great. People are excited to do it, right? So it's all relative as to sort of what the activity is. And Twain even says, like, hey, there are a lot of activities that I think are weird that people pay to do, and there are other activities that are kind of fun that people are paid to do. So it's all relative. Okay. So in terms of high level impact of incentives and motivations, one of the key takeaways thus far is that it's not super compelling, the evidence that incentives are crowding out motivations for interesting tasks. So I mentioned work. Again, you get a raise at work, it's not necessarily going to impact your motivation. In fact, it might make you more motivated and say, this is great, I feel valued and I'm excited to do this. It's also worth noting that behavioral scientists can almost always think of motivators that aren't money that are likely to work well. And so as you're studying behavioral science and thinking about this, one of the things I most frequently observe is people come to me and ask, like, oh, okay, great. Should I pay someone to do this? And this is, I think, for people who are less familiar with behavioral science, almost a default first option. And the answer that I almost always give is maybe, but there's probably something better that you can do, especially when you're trying to create that mental model and that reference point of, oh, is this something that I should be paid to do or something that I should want to do and feel like this is exciting, right? So anytime we're thinking about paying someone for an uncertain task that people don't have a clear mental model of, the first question you might think about is, okay, Tom Sawyer, fence painting, is this something that we want to create a mental model? Is something that someone needs to be paid to do or not, or does it not matter? Are they already like, they're excited, this is not going to impact their likelihood of doing this one way or the other? Okay, so again, crowding out is not that big of a deal for many adults. Again, if you're getting paid to do a job, getting paid more, not really going to impact you. And it's pretty rare that people are trying things totally new, unless you're creating a new product or something like that. But in most cases, people have a mental model of, oh, I've signed up for a product before, I've signed up for an app before. I'm sort of anchoring to that experience. Okay. So I'm going to go through a couple of case studies with this in mind, in which we have tested different incentives and incentive alternatives and talk about how we set those up, how we ran those, the results, and the implications to how we think about designing products, interventions, etc., using incentives. Okay. Any questions before I go on to the case studies? And we'll have time at the end for questions as well. Okay, cool. All right, the first case study I'd like to go through is with Nugent. Anybody from Wisconsin on the call? Do a quick chat into the chat if you're from Wisconsin. Quick shout out to Wisconsin. Nugent is, we might have one. Went to school there. Nice. Adam went to school there. Very nice. Yeah, so Nugent is based or was based in Wisconsin, and it's a shared services organization. We're not allowed to say health plan that supports two large Wisconsin health insurance providers, WA Trust and Health Tradition Health Plan. And so we worked with Nugent to try to increase uptake of telehealth. And Nugent was in a really tricky position because they covered the healthcare for a lot of people in Wisconsin in rural areas. And so when you're in a rural area of Wisconsin, getting to, and this is not just specific to Wisconsin, but when you're in a rural area more broadly, often getting to medical facilities, especially high quality medical facilities, can be especially difficult. If you're familiar with winter in the Midwest or any of that area, which I know Ryan very much is, just driving, especially in some of these parts of the year, can be very difficult. And so Nugent felt strongly, and we agreed, that there was a really nice opportunity to try to increase the usage of telehealth for services like, hey, you've got a sore throat, you've got maybe you have a cough, maybe you have a non-urgent need for high quality medical treatment, and we could actually go to an immediate telehealth. And their telehealth provider is called Maddie Virtual Care. This is a really nice one because we got on there, started using it. You can literally just sign up, click, and see a physician right away. And so I got on there. One day, I think I hit my head. I was like, I might have a concussion. I got on there right away, was able to see a healthcare provider almost immediately. It was very nice. So one of the questions they came to us and said, Irrational Labs, we would love to increase the uptake and usage of telehealth. And one of the challenges that we have working in rural Wisconsin is that we don't have a ton of emails. We think that people have may not have access. Like we're worried that like some of our digital stuff might not be as effective. We send a bunch of physical postcards and mailers, and that's the way that we hypothesize people are most likely to sort of see what we send and engage with it. And often, and I think that their hypothesis is probably correct. They've been working with this population for a long time. And so one of the things that we thought was, okay, how can we work within the constructs of this particular sort of space, this problem space, in a physical mailer or something similar? Okay, so high level, again, we're trying to increase Maddie virtual care for urgent care. Again, so in some, trying to get someone to go maybe instead of going to an urgent care. Also, they have a behavioral health option, which is really nice. So basically, you can go there and get immediate sort of therapy as well. So that's very nice. And then increase this access to high quality health services and reduce emergency department utilization and improve health outcomes for people in Wisconsin. So we set up a couple of different experimental conditions. First, I think it's interesting to note, we did an in-depth literature review to try to figure out if we're going to try to get people sign up for telehealth, how could we do it? Any ideas? Because we ran 5 different experimental conditions, multiple of them, excuse me, multiple of them using incentives. Any ideas, any flavor of incentive that you would recommend using or trying that you've seen, that you say, this would be really interesting to try to get people to sign up for telehealth? How, if you were structuring an incentive, what would you do? Feel free to chat it or shout it out if you have an idea for how to structure an incentive. You got one. Make it cheaper, ensure timely service. Yeah. Yeah, so you could provide a discount basically. Say, okay, we'll give you a discount to this. Yep. Food. Yep, food could be an incentive. Excuse me. Any other incentive structures? We've got a free device and communicating the benefit to society. Yeah, benefit to society, earlier, faster diagnosis. Love it. Firstly, I would like to congratulate all of you because basically none of you said pay them, not needing to put on a jacket. That is an incentive, especially in winter in Wisconsin. I'd like to congratulate all of you because none of you said just pay them, which I think in most contexts, well, this means that you've been paying attention to our Irrational Labs behavioral science approach. And actually, I was really curious to try something that we almost always recommend against, which is just pay them. So we almost never get to or recommend just trying to offer financial reward for people to do a particular action. It's like let's try it. Yeah, emotional appeal. Yeah, it could be an emotional appeal. Get your help your kids in winter, etc. So we decided, man, I'm struggling. we designed 5 conditions actually in this one. The first one's the control. And in this one, we said rash, sore throat. Maddie virtual care is urgent care from home. And this one wanted to create a clear mental model that this is an urgent care from your home and have a salient deadline. So in the top right, said Miguel, sign up for Maddie virtual care by September 24th. We also provided some benefits there in the middle, 2 minutes to sign up, 24/7 access to care. Again, I think clear, clean design with a QR code that you could use to sign up. And we have a clear mental model on the right of a woman there accessing telehealth via her doctor, and she looks like she has a sore throat. Cool. This is our control condition. And we designed this one, again, to create this clear mental model. Okay, second condition that we tried was a regret lottery. So in our literature reviews, we had done a lot of review and seen that actually the regret lotteries are extremely effective in getting people to sign up for things in a variety of contexts. And we'd seen them replicated and worked in a variety of contexts. And we thought, let's try it here. In this particular engagement, we were able to actually secure the money and said, let's just do it. We're going to be able to pay the winners. Let's do a regret lottery. And so we said, hey, sign up for Maddie Virtual Care again by September 24th. We maintain this deadline throughout. And we said 100 winners will get $100 cash each. And we had a sort of real ticket on that postcard. We also mailed an envelope, and I'll talk about the structure of this, at the same time for all of these, which had an insert in it in one of several things. In the regret lottery condition, it had an actual ticket. So it had a lottery ticket with a number. Again, you're entered into our lottery, right? You need to sign up to validate your ticket, right? So we anticipate that this sort of regret could motivate people. If they win this, their ticket isn't validated, and they aren't going to be able to do it. We also sent out emails, by the way, at the same time to all the people the ones that we had emails for, explaining which condition they were. So if they were in the regret lottery, we gave them a little context about the regret lottery and, hey, if you win and you haven't validated your ticket, i.e. signed up for virtual care, you're not going to be able to get paid. And so again, we use this regret aversion as well as endowment effect. So we're giving them this ticket. We think that people are going to overvalue what they have. And this tangible, really salient, concrete lottery ticket, which we thought would be exciting for people and motivating for them to sign up for this virtual care. The third condition we tried was unconditional rewards. This condition might have been my favorite. And in this condition, we literally sent everyone in this condition a $2 bill. And so we sent them $2 in an envelope again, but we sent them a postcard, which we thought was key to get them to open the envelope. And in the postcard, we said, hey, we're sending you an envelope with cash. Be on the lookout. We got one orange envelope, $2 to thank you. And basically the framing here was a reciprocity framing. And we said, hey, we're going to send you $2. We'd love for you to sign up. We want you to be healthy. We'd love for you to sign up for Maddie Virtual Care. That's it. And we hope that you can use it and be healthy and use it whenever you need it. By having this $2 bill, we thought this is, again, highly salient, a little bit novel and relevant. And so we really wanted to leverage this reciprocity. We're giving you something, just sending you cash. Love for you to sign up for this. Okay. Our fourth condition, which we tried, was conditional reward. And so in the conditional reward condition, we said, hey, we're going to mail you a $10 bill if you sign up. So just sign up, and we'll send you a $10 bill. And so the idea here is that, again, people may want to use telehealth at some point in the future, sign up at that point when they're in that hot state of maybe not feeling well. It's probably going to seem much more complex, difficult the benefits of signing up are far in the future. The $10 benefit for signing up is now, right? So we want to leverage that immediacy, sort of leverage that present bias and say, look, we'll give you $10 for signing up right now. That's it. Okay. And then our fifth condition was completion bias. And this and our control were our only two non-financial conditions, excuse me, our only two non-financial conditions. And in the completion bias condition, we basically said, your profile is incomplete. Complete it by our deadline, September 24th, and secure instant access to urgent care online. And so this completion bias condition assumes that we're motivated to finish tasks, and we derive pleasure when things seem complete and tasks are complete. Okay, any questions about these? Well, I'm going to tell you the setup, and then I'll pause for questions. So what we did was, in phase one, we designed a postcard, an envelope plus inserts, and an email, and we sent them all out at the same time. So the goal was they would see this, hopefully multiple touch points. And if you were randomized into one condition, you would receive everything from the same condition. So let's say you were in the $2 reciprocity condition. It would say, hey, we're sending, watch out for an orange envelope. We're sending you $2. The envelope would come inside, it would say, hey, Maddie Virtual Care, sign up. Here's $2. Thank you. And then we'd have an email. Said, hey, if you sign up, we appreciate it. We sent you $2. Maddie Virtual Care is urgent care online. Okay. Then we had a follow-up. So we provided a deadline for people to sign up. And then we followed up about a month later with another envelope, which either had an insert that said, hey, look, thanks for signing up, and a reward if they earned it or they won it. So if they were in the $10 condition and they signed up, thanks for signing up, here's your $10. It's in an envelope. And if they hadn't signed up, we said, hey, if you'd like to sign up, we encourage it. Our new deadline is Y, is another date. So we created a second deadline, an opportunity for people to sign up. Okay, so here's what the timeline looked like. Launch, again, with the postcard, envelope, email. First deadline. Then we sent the mailer out about a month after, and then we had another deadline, and then we concluded the experiment and started collecting data. Any questions about the experimental setup? There's one question. In this fourth case, the ad prominently displays 2-minute sign up time. It may provide incentive not to sign up now. I could do it in 2 minutes anyways. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's possible. I think what I've seen on this, and I think what we've tested, is that these time-based estimates can be effective if the time estimated is lower than the reference point or what the expectation is. And if it's lower, I think 2 minutes and below. I think once we get to 5 minutes to ask someone to do something is not, I think then you start to see, hey, this is too long. But I haven't seen anything suggesting like if you provide a time reference point, people will be like, oh, it's easy, I'll do it later. There's an interesting hypothesis, I'm not sure. There's another question, says, did the confirmation bias condition get a mailer? Yes, every condition got a mailer. And so for confirmation bias, they got another mailer, said, hey, reinforced whatever the condition was. Hey, make sure, you're incomplete, make sure you sign up. So the confirmation bias actually might have said, hey, sign up again. Here's the deadline. And so basically there was like a complete, you signed up or you didn't sign up, thanks for signing up. And if you didn't sign up, you could still sign up for the deadline. Why cash? Instinct is cash generates more trust than sketchy looking check or online credit. Yeah, that's the hypothesis. The hypothesis for us was that cash is going to be really salient, immediately useful, and most increase. I like trust. I like the trust hypothesis. That was certainly one of our main hypotheses. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people postpone sign up regardless. Was gaining trust an objective? I think trust was a secondary objective, really hard to measure, but I think our main objective was just, again, getting someone to sign up for the telehealth. Okay. All right. So here's the question. What do you think won? Type it into the chat. So again, we have 5 conditions. We have control. We've got regret lottery. We've got unconditional, $2. We've got conditional reward, $10. And we've got completion bias. What do you think won? Or if you're bolder, put them in order, whatever order you think was the correct order. Condition 5. Oh yeah, say what the condition is. Say what the condition is. If you say a number condition, condition 5 was completion bias, Jay. $2. Let's get them all in, because if you don't predict, you always knew. This is good. This is the best. This is the most fun part of the presentation is predictions, completion bias. This is how we fight hindsight bias. Is predictions. Completion bias, completion bias. Got a lot of completion. Oh wow, a lot of completion bias. Love it. Regret lottery, nice. Number $2, but I feel bad about predicting it. Why? I'm curious. I'm curious, Dan, if you're able to come off mute, why do you feel bad predicting about the $2?
I think it's just kind of appealing to some very weird part of ourselves, which I'm not sure we want to feed any more than it already gets fed.
Okay, fair enough. Cool. What was the completion bias? I'll show completion bias again. Completion. Oh yeah, I love the ordering. Excuse me. Completion bias, regret lottery, unconditional reciprocity, and conditional. Completion bias was, hey, your profile's incomplete. Please sign up. Complete your sign up. Man, if I click, I think it's going to send me forward, so I can't click back at this point. I'm sorry, Lana. But that was the crux of it. Cool, we got another one. Completion, conditional, unconditional, then regret. Okay, nobody picked the control. Nobody wants to take the control. Oh, I can go back. Okay, here's completion bias. Sorry, I'll go. Completion bias is this one. Lana, if that impacts your prediction. Cool. All right. So here's what we got. We sent this out to over 55,000 unique members. Couple of different plans. There's some experimental nuances here. I'm gonna sort of gloss over. We had 2 different participant pools, one that could receive financial incentives and one that couldn't. And we analyzed them separately and then combined them. We did a bunch of statistical analysis on the back end and feel pretty good that fundamentally these 2 groups are not distinct, but we analyzed them both separately and together. So we'll break that out and show you the differences. Okay, here's the result. Drum roll, please. In our first experiment, this is the one with financial incentives. We actually found that conditional reward outperformed all the other conditions, and lottery and unconditional reward both outperformed the control. So control was 2.77% sign up. Lottery and unconditional reward, not statistically significantly different, but both beating the control at a little under 5%. And then conditional reward, beating them all highly statistically significantly at about 7.5% sign up. So this was the $10 pay me if I sign up, I'll get $10. But of note, each of these conditions that we designed outperform the control. On the other experiment, which is the state telehealth, the one that could not receive financial incentives, we found that completion bias statistically significantly outperformed the control at a little over 4%. And I mentioned that we did a lot of statistical analysis on the back end, looking at this a variety of different ways. This is, again, 2 separate cohorts, but there is a lot about them that's similar, so much so that I feel pretty good combining these for a variety of reasons, which I could tell you about later. But if we do combine them, which I think is fairly safe, we find that completion bias is actually not different than the lottery or unconditional reward conditions, and conditional reward outperform them all. I don't think anybody of us predicted conditional reward. I didn't see it. Did anyone predict conditional reward? I don't think I saw anyone predict conditional reward. That's amazing. I will say that that's good. This is a behavioral science crowd. I like that we're skeptical of conditional reward, and I think other people would default to conditional reward, which is not always the best. But in this case, conditional reward actually outperformed all the other conditions, which I think is fascinating. However, there are a couple of takeaways from me. Not only is it important that conditional reward was best, but all of these experimental conditions outperform the control, and completion bias, again, was the same as lottery and unconditional reward. So again, we were able to create a behaviorally informed condition, no additional financial incentive, that was the same as 2 of the 3 financial conditions, and all of these conditions outperform the control. Yeah, so it's huge. This is a great experiment. We were very excited about this. And by the way, Nugent was also extremely excited about this. They were thrilled. We added over 3,000 signups for telehealth. We estimated that it would generate an additional 2,400 telehealth visits, and they estimated, this is a number that Nugent provided, not us, that this would save them $1.5 million in savings over the next 5 years, just this experiment. So yeah. So this,
yeah, Richard, you charge them 1.6 million for your genius, right?
we did not.
But they just didn't include that in the equation. I get it. It's cool.
Yeah. So to David's point, we worked with them for a long time, and this was an important question. It's like, okay, well, if we paid these people to do this, to this question that I brought up at the beginning, which is, if you're paying someone to do something, are they less likely to do it, right? You pay someone to do something, are they less likely to do it? Nugent actually found that there was no difference in usage rates amongst any of the conditions, or from the conditions to people who had signed up independently. So that's sort of where they got this $1.5 million number from, and this is why they were, I guess, so excited about this. So again, incentives, complex relationships, but again, once you're sort of signed up, you're in it, right? They paid you to sign up, okay, but now you're in it. It's like, okay, this is a healthcare thing, I'm in it. All right. Well, again, it depends on the context, right? The jogging was an example. This is, I think, why we test all of these. So the outset, I said, it really depends on the context and the amounts and the scenario. That's why I think it's so important that we test these. And that's why anytime anyone comes to me with an incentive question, I'm like, it really, really depends, and it's very complex. Okay, so, well, I'll answer this one at the end, Dan. This is a really good question. How would I sum up what is so cool about this? I'm gonna give one more example, and then I'll answer your question at the end. Okay, so the other example I want to give is with Steady, which is actually an incentive alternative. And so Steady is an app that we worked with that basically provides gig jobs, or like, you download Steady and it gives you lists of gig jobs that you could do near you right away. And one of the ways that Steady makes money is through basically referrals. You say, okay, great, I could sign up to drive for Uber. You sign up through Steady, Uber pays Steady. And one of the things that makes Steady really nice is to say, you know what, we're going to make that clear. We're going to increase trust. We're going to say, we're getting paid to show you these jobs. That's the way it works. They pay us a fee, and we're going to share some of that with you. So we'd love to give you $30. If they're giving us $50, we'll give you $30. The issue is payment to people is much, much easier if their bank accounts are linked. And so Steady said, look, we want to get people to link their bank accounts. Mailing people this money is hard. Sending them gift cards is hard. We also, if we link their bank accounts, we can provide them with a lot of additional value, like tracking their income and a lot of additional services. So they said, we want people to sign up and link their bank accounts to Steady. And they asked people to link their bank accounts, and they weren't really doing it. And so Steady, for a limited time, said, we are going to actually offer a $10 incentive. We know from the experiment that we just saw that asking people to pay a $10 incentive to do a thing was more effective than all of the other conditions. This is what they had done. And they came to us and said, hey, we're already offering a $10 incentive. And, you know, we feel like people still aren't signing up. And we went in and performed behavioral diagnosis. One of the first things I noticed was it feels weird in this context to offer the $10 incentive. I think part of it was how it was framed as, you know, sign up, link your bank account. It made it, I think it was trust reducing in a lot of ways, the way it was initially framed. And it was a strange one. And so we came in and said, you know what, I think actually we could design some behaviorally informed alternatives that would perform better than a $10 incentive. Okay, so here's what we did. We designed 3 different conditions: a control, a forced choice, and an incomplete information condition. Yeah, if you're offering me money, you must be expecting something back from me, for sure. Yeah, that very nicely sums up the sort of like maybe perhaps trust reducing element here, for sure. Okay, so control, forced choice, incomplete information. So this is what they had when you signed up for Steady. This is what it looked like. There's a pop-up that said, hey, access our free income tracker and get even more. Then there are 4 bullets of benefits. And then to increase trust, they say, we're never selling your data to third parties. And then let's do it, or maybe later. They were, incidentally, they had tested let's do it a lot, and they were convinced let's do it was the most successful CTA they had ever seen. They were highly reluctant to deviate from the CTA. It took a lot of convincing for them to deviate from the CTA. And they thought a more direct CTA was unappealing, etc. We modified what they had for our experiment to build a different control here. So the control that we have here is the exact same as the status quo, only we changed the purple image to a red image. The reason we did this was to be more aligned with our other conditions, where we wanted people to pause and reflect on what they were about to read. That's it. So we basically adapted their status quo, changed out the image to try to nudge reflection. This is what we adopted for our experimental control. Right. Then we developed 2 other conditions. The first is forced choice. And with the forced choice condition, the hypothesis here is that skipping is easy, right? You can always sign up later. To the point earlier where if it takes 2 minutes, I can just do it later. This is the exact hypothesis here. I can always just do this later. We procrastinate, and later becomes never, right? So we avoid choice because it's difficult. Skipping is easy. Cost is invisible. And so we designed a forced choice condition. We said, hey, please accept or decline our free income tracker to continue. Okay, accept or decline. I think one of the things I was most excited about in designing this experiment was that accept and decline are equally weighted CTAs, which you very rarely see. And I don't really know why you rarely see it, but I was convinced that if we designed equally weighted CTAs, it would do well, because we wanted people to make a decision. We didn't want people to say, oh, whatever, I'll just do it later. We say decline is a real decision. Saying decline means I'm not doing it. Okay. Equally weighted visually. Yeah, that's what I mean by equally weighted, is that they were both in purple here. Often you'll see when non-equally weighted CTA is like this, where you see one is purple and one is white. This is what I mean by equally weighted. They're both purple here. Okay. So the difference versus the control was, again, just in that the text at the above and the CTAs. We said, please accept or decline our free income tracker to continue, and made those two CTAs equally weighted. Great. And then we had one more condition, which you'll recognize from the last experiment, which is a completion bias condition. And we said, look, again, we think this is a really interesting psychology. Let's see what happens. We think people will be excited about finishing things they've started. Let's have an incompletion scenario where, say, notice your setup is incomplete and your CTAs are complete setup and maybe later. Again, there's high levels of resistance to changing this from let's do it to complete setup. There's almost an incredulity, which was very, very intense. Why would you do this? Let's do it as best. We've tested it many, many times. And I think this is one of the risks of testing, is if you don't interpret the results correctly, you can become anchored to something which is not actually your best option. Okay, so again, we have this incompletion notice up front. Again, complete your account setup to access our free income tracker, and then the complete setup maybe later. And so the three conditions look like this. The control, again, which is their status quo with only the image changed. The force choice, which is the exact same as the control, only we've prompted an accept or decline, both in the initial text and the equally weighted CTAs. And then completion bias, which is the same as the control, only we've changed that initial text. Notice your setup's incomplete. We have a subtext there, and then complete setup is the main CTA. Okay, predictions. Well, actually, I'm going to, yeah, actually, just throw in your predictions. Control versus force choice work over a longer time span. Well, we're about to find out.
Just a quick question on
yeah.
that. Can you go back one slide? Sorry.
Yeah.
So you said that what they needed to do is connect their bank account. Is that what we're voting on here? Or are we voting on who clicks either let's do it, accept, or complete setup? Because there's a difference there, right?
Great question. And the answer is both. So we'll bet on, we'll bet. I love gambling on these things. We'll guess on both. So we'll first do who clicks, and then we'll also do who links bank account. Okay, great question. Okay, again, this is a really well-designed experiment. Feel really good about this. Over 15,000 users. They were all new. None of them had linked their bank account, and randomization was extremely effective. All right, so we got force choice, completion bias, control. Okay, cool. I love it. Put in your orders. So the first one we're gonna. So this is how it worked. You click let's do it. Then you'd link your bank account, and then you'd go to Plaid. And this is all the same for all the conditions. You go to Plaid, and you'd actually link your bank account. Cool. Decline, basically you'd X out at the top, or do the maybe later, or at the bottom of your screen, and then you'd be back to the app. Okay, so predictions about clicking let's do it. So just that first part, maybe this is, yeah, I'll go back to this. Just clicking this main CTA, put in your order of what you think. Checklist matched with the complete setup makes it look like a highly cognitive step. I'm not sure what that means, but put in your order. Hypothesized order, Zoom user. Completion, force choice, control. Forced, completion, control. For clicks, this is clicks only. So we're doing clicks first and then bank account linking. So for clicks. Complete setup, forced control, forced control. So we've got a mix between force choice and completion. Okay, cool. Force Zoom user says force, then control, then completion. Okay, I like it. Anyone who Yeah. Anyone who guesses is doing the right thing, because otherwise you always knew. Okay, cool. We got a completion, then control, then forced. Okay, cool. We got a couple of control in the middle, which I like. I like that. Okay, here's what we saw. Just for this first one, and just clicking the let's do it CTA. All these conditions are statistically significant at the 1% level.
Richard, I'm just getting worried. Do you need to call telehealth?
Yeah, I probably do.
My
I probably
gosh,
do.
Richard, have some hot tea.
But you're gonna have to pay me $10 to do it.
Oh
So-
my God.
So in the first experiment, it was completion bias, then forced choice, then control. These are all highly statistically significant, but I will note that in terms of actual impact, the difference between the completion bias and forced choice is negligible. So although this is what we would consider to be highly statistically significant, you could see the actual effect size here is pretty minimal. And to get someone to click, they do just about the same. I mean, 63% versus 60% in the long run is a big difference, but again, you know, not that huge. And you can see these are massive improvements over the control. Both of these conditions crushing the control. Smash expectations, that's right. Extremely satisfying. Now here's the big reveal. How about the actual linking, account linking, predictions? I know we're just about at time, so
Richard, you all need to know, as you're predicting, Richard was like, I don't know, Ryan, you think if I go 40 minutes will be okay? But you went full Vegas on us. You're like having so much fun with the reveals. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was just in Vegas, so I mean, that's why I'm going full Vegas. Okay, so the account linking, any changes to your predictions or same? Completion, control, forced. For account linking, Sandesh says completion, control, force. You could recopy in your prediction if you like it. Completion, forced, control, same, forced, then completion. Completion, force, control. Okay, cool. Awesome. I'll give it 10 more seconds. Put them in. This is your chance for glory. All right. And what we observed was same directional, but look at the impact now. Completion bias crushing it. Forced choice still highly both statistically significant and impactful versus the control. And so we went from link rate of 7.1% to 11.6% with the forced choice and 15.9% with the completion bias. And so these are highly statistically significant and better than the control. And the important thing to note here, I think that's interesting, is the completion bias really extended its impact, its advantage here. And one of the reasons I think that is, I would ask you if we had more time, do the more intentional commitment. That's right, Carolyn. Yeah, exactly. That's what I think is happening. So I think people made a more intentional commitment. Their expectations were more aligned that they are going to complete setup. And I think that initial expectation creation actually led to the highest level of sign up. Okay, now we're going to look at the interesting thing for the purposes of this talk, which is cash versus behavioral science. And I said, hey, they were offering $10 beforehand, and we ran an experiment. We wanted to see, is it better than $10? Turns out it was. It was better than $10 and meaningfully better than the $10 they were offering in a variety of metrics. Now, this wasn't an RCT versus a $10, but we looked at a variety of different metrics, and I feel confident that it is much better, the experiment we designed, than the $10 incentive, conditional incentive. So they were offering $10 before. We saw a 6.7% increase. Our experiment, all conditions, including the control, had an 8.2% increase, with forced choice being 8.9% increase and missing information 13.2% increase. If you don't believe this, which you may not for a variety of reasons, I'd encourage you to look at the max daily link rate with under the $10 incentive, which over that period, the maximum over 1 day link rate was 14.4%. And the average daily link rate, not the maximum for the missing information. This is the average versus the max. Their best versus our average over that period was 15.9% versus 14.4%. So again, not an RCT, but I think anecdotal evidence that I think strongly suggests that, again, the behaviorally informed conditions wildly outperformed the $10 incentive. So what does this mean? It means that it depends. Do financial incentives work? In some cases, they work best. In some cases, the behaviorally informed approach works best. And you can see with a $10 incentive in 2 different conditions, 2 different experiments, 2 different contexts, sort of differing results. It can't all just be, it depends. I disagree. Okay.
I'm looking for some kind of a rule of thumb in this example, or what about this particular set of circumstances led you to that conclusion? Just because, I mean, for us to try to go and act on what you're teaching us here, we need some ground to stand on so that we can say, oh, well, based on these factors, Richard looked at those and said that completion bias was the thing to use. Otherwise, we just throw up our hands and go, it depends, got to go ask Richard.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things I mentioned for, especially in the steady condition, that was most salient to me is this. I think someone pointed out in the chat, the fact. Well, there are a couple of contextually important scenarios. One, in the case of steady, people often are looking for a gig job. They may have unstable incomes, may have low trust already, and you're coming onto a product where you're saying, hey, I'll give you $10 if you link your bank account. And that does seem like a questionable proposition. What do you want from me, especially in the context of that particular behavior, right? And when you're trying to look for a job, you're not really sure. You may be in a bad place. You may have financial scarcity. You may have a lot of different things contributing to low overall amounts of trust. In the context of the telehealth, in many cases, like the NewGen brand was extremely familiar. People knew it, they saw it, they would see these orange cards, they knew they were coming in. We have anecdotal evidence that people at least would take a look at what was coming in. And I think we had also created this sort of like highly visually appealing, compelling narrative that someone could see and say, oh, okay, this seems reasonable. I think there's a good chance that I sign up for this. We'll do it. One of the elements that I think was on the back of the card that we didn't highlight was the incentive alignment that we really wanted to highlight. We said, when you are healthier, it's better for us, right? And so we really wanted to make a compelling argument as to why our incentives are aligned and why it's not just we're paying you $10 and now we want something from you. Hey, actually, if you do this, we think you're going to be healthier and that's better for us as a business. And so that was that incentive alignment, I think, and trust or lack thereof is one of the factors. Well, I guess one of the primary factors I might consider when I'm thinking about, do I want to try to experiment with a financial incentive or not?
Cool.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
The question about let's do it, did they accept it? They did accept it, and they started listening to us. The let's do it, they gave up on let's do it. And I think this evidence was highly compelling to them, so that they bought in, and we ended up doing, I think, 4 total experiments, including like creating a new feature together with them. So this experiment was highly compelling, and they did end up converting to behavioral science. So anyways, I know we're way over time. Apologies for going over, but yeah.
Yeah, like I said, you were like, oh, I'll be 20 minutes. And you set a new membership event record. I think it's a holiday treat. I think it's a holiday treat for everybody, Richard. Thank you. to those ends, if you do have additional questions, please go to Ask a Behavioral Scientist in Slack. We can definitely talk about them there. Fortunately, Richard was able to let some of that discussion happen during the event. To everybody, have a safe, restful, joyous holiday season. Do not accidentally maim, hurt, or kill any of your most annoying family members, because I want you to come back for membership events next year. I don't want you to be in prison. So on that uplifting note, thank you again, Richard. And we'll talk to everybody in the new year. Have a great rest of 2022.
Good to see you all. Take care.
All right,
Happy
thanks,
holidays.
Richard.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye.